Yo, what is going on, everybody? This is RBT, and we're bringing back the Madden 17 experiments onto the channel. If you're unfamiliar, most of these Madden 17 experiments are pretty much laid-back videos testing some things out in Madden 17, and today we have a pretty interesting idea that we're going to be putting to the test. Like I said, these are pretty much going to be laid-back videos, pretty relaxed, just going to be extra videos onto the channel, just testing things out in Madden 17. Like I said, these videos don't take long to make in terms of actually recording and editing the video, but the rosters take forever to make. Like, the rosters for these videos take anywhere from like 3 to 4 to like 7 or 8 hours to make. But regardless, I think it's gonna be very interesting, and hopefully you guys do enjoy them back onto the channel. You guys really enjoyed them when I used to do them a couple months ago, kind of got away from them, but here we're back, and like I said, there's just gonna be extra uploads onto the channel. And you see the video title, and you might be wondering, what the heck, how are you gonna test that? As you see in the title, we're gonna be doing what if offensive linemen didn't exist in football. And you might be asking yourself how the heck I'm going to test that, but you'll see it right here. As you see, every single offensive lineman in the NFL, every starting offensive lineman, every backup offensive lineman, every free agent offensive lineman is 0 overall. Every single stat across the board for every single lineman is 0 overall. So basically, it's like every single team is going to be playing without an offensive line, because if you guys have seen my past gameplays where I've used 0 overall players, they're like having just a paper plate on the field instead of an actual player. Like, there's no difference in that player and having a paper plate instead. Like, it's 100% like not having a player there. It's just having a body there that just gets in your freaking way. So basically, it's like not having an offensive lineman. So we're putting this to the test today. We're going to simulate a season and see what crazy results happen. And something that I think is going to be very interesting to see is how bad the running game does for each and every team. I guarantee the sack totals are going to be absolutely inflated, and I think it's just going to be a very interesting video to see how everything comes together without having an offensive lineman in football. I'm thinking about turning this idea into a mini series where I do this for almost every single positional unit. So if you guys enjoyed this video and think it's interesting, if we can smash 1,000 likes on this video, I'll do the same exact experiment video tomorrow, but for defensive linemen. And also, that'll be on top of a double upload with my Houston Texans Connected Franchise series coming out tomorrow as well. So 1,000 likes on this video, and we'll be doing what if defensive linemen didn't exist in football. So like I said, guys, we're about to hop into a Connected Franchise, see how things go, and see what would happen in football if there was no offensive lineman. So like I said, jumping into a Connected Franchise, I chose the Cleveland Browns because everybody loves the Cleveland Browns, right? Because it's the freaking Cleveland Browns. They never win games. So once again, every single offensive lineman is 0 overall. It does say 12, but that's because even if you put every single stat as 0, they're technically a 0 overall, but it says 12. So they are 0 overalls. And like I said, every single offensive lineman that's a free agent is also a 0 overall, because if they weren't 0 overalls, all the NFL teams that have 0 overall offensive linemen would just go and sign the free agents, and it would just completely screw up the experiment. So every single offensive lineman, like I said, is 0 overall, even in free agency. And I also want to see if some of the running backs out there regress throughout the season, because with a 0 overall offensive line in a simulation, they're probably going to have very bad seasons. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and advance all the way. Let's go to the playoffs and see what the heck happens in the NFL with no offensive linemen. So we've made it to the end of the regular season, and of course the Browns, as always, even though there's no offensive linemen in the NFL, still don't make the playoffs. So it was an even playing ground. As you see, none of their offensive linemen did improve at the position. And like I said, I was kind of curious to see if anybody regressed, and Isaiah Crowell actually went down 1 overall, as did Corey Coleman and some other guys. And I'm kind of curious to see if all the offenses in the NFL were absolute trash, because the passing game was probably bad, because the quarterbacks probably got sacked a lot. So it was probably just bad all around offensively for everybody in the NFL, but we're going to have to see. Really quick, I want to look at the standings, and the Browns still were pretty trash, went 2-14. The Ravens did pretty well. We'll just go through all the divisions really quick and see who won each division. The Ravens, like I said, won the AFC North, the AFC South. My Titans went 8-8 and unfortunately didn't make the playoffs, but the Colts were trash. Their offensive lineman was pretty trash before this experiment, and, you know, with no offensive lineman, it's just going to be a little bit worse. I mean, technically, probably about the same for the Colts, but the Texans won the division there. AFC East, the Patriots are still the GOATs, went 14-2. The Bills had a good season at 10-6. AFC West, Chiefs went 12-4. The Chargers had a really good season at 11-5. The Raiders and Broncos both split the season record at 8-8. The Vikings won the NFC North at 9-7. The Packers went 8-7 and got a wild card spot. NFC South, the Falcons had a good season at 10-6. The Panthers went 9-7. Their offensive line isn't that great, So they actually benefited from this apparently. And now the NFC East. So Giants did really well at 10-6. The Cowboys had a bad season. So that shows you right there. The Cowboys went from having like the best offensive line in the NFL to having an awful offensive line, and basically for this experiment, no offensive line. So they actually were hurt pretty bad because of that. And in the NFC West, the Seahawks are still the champions of the NFC West. But look at that, the 49ers, who pretty much in every simulation you ever do are awful. They usually go like at least 2-14. Sometimes they'll get a couple extra wins and maybe surprise you, go 4-12. But without every NFL team having an offensive line, they definitely improved because of that and went all the way up to 8-8. So now I'm very curious now to jump into the stats and see who won the MVP. So at least we didn't have the worst offense in the NFL. So who won the MVP? And yes, that's what I was expecting, dude. It's all defensive players. So that is actually crazy. That 100% that's what I expected, because I guarantee you that Khalil Mack had like, I'm going to say like 25 sacks, if not 30. It's all defensive ends as well, because they all probably got a ton of sacks. Is there Russell Wilson? Okay, I actually missed Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's the only offensive player in the top 10. And I'm not sure, is Barkevious Mingo listed as a defensive end or an outside linebacker? If he's a defensive end in the game, that means every single player in the top 10 of the MVP, aside from Russell Wilson, was a defensive end. So that is absolutely crazy. But I do want to see who won the Offensive Player of the Year. Tom Brady still did that. LaShawn McCoy, a running back up there, so he might not have had an awful year. And look at that. Maybe the quarterbacks were hurt more than the running backs. There's still a lot of running backs in the top 10. More running backs than quarterbacks, which is usually the opposite. And if we go to the NFC, is it the same thing? It's about split right here. Adrian Peterson had a good year with the Minnesota Vikings. So with that said, let's go ahead and check out these stats. And first of all, let's see who had the best offense in the NFL. The Patriots still had a decent year. They had 7,000 yards. Let's see rushing yards. The best rushing yards. The Bills still had 3,100 rushing yards. So it looks like the running backs actually still had really good years, but look at the quarterbacks and passing yards. 1,200 passing yards for the Bills. That is awful. That is actually awful. The Patriots still had a decent season, but like I said, really crazy. It seems like the quarterback play was hurt worse than the running back play. The Packers still had 27 passing touchdowns with the Patriots 26, and there was a big jump off after that down to 17. And the Bills and Panthers only had 5 passing touchdowns all season long. And the Patriots led the NFL with 26 points per game and a big jump off after that. And you had the Saints, the New Orleans Saints, with 11 points per game. That is trash. That's actually trash. And look at the Patriots, 24 rushing touchdowns. The Bills had a lot too, so that just really shocks me. So Tom Brady still had over 3,400 passing yards, almost 3,500, so that's not too far off his normal numbers. Aaron Rodgers had 3,400, then there's a big jump off after that down to 2,600. Let's see who threw the most interceptions, and that goes to Carson Wentz with 16. Most passing touchdowns with the Aaron Rodgers still had a really good year. 27 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. And holy crap, dude, look at this. The time sacked. Whoa. What are the odds? 127 times sacked for all of these quarterbacks. So is there like a limit? So does the time sacked get capped at 127? Because you can't tell me like 15 quarterbacks were all sacked 127 times. It's got to be capped at 127. Then there's a drop off to 121, and then the least amount of times a quarterback was sacked in the season was 50. Jared Goff. So how random was that? And then Dak Prescott was sacked 13 times. Maybe he played a little bit for Tony Romo because Tony Romo was still in this experiment. So that's just wild to me, dude. 127 times sacked. We're going to have to go see these defensive stats in just a second. So Jared Goff had 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, but a starting quarterback, Tyrod Taylor, 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Cam Newton, 5 touchdowns, 4 picks. So there was a lot of starting quarterbacks that really got hurt from this because they just didn't really have time to throw the football because they were sacked 127 times. So this was crazy. A lot crazier than I thought, but there were still players like Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers who still somehow had effective seasons without having offensive linemen at the helm. Now looking at the running backs, see if they were affected at all. No! That just really boggles my mind, dude. That the running backs still had great seasons regardless of having no offensive linemen. Now their yardage looks about the same, but they didn't have that many rushing touchdowns because there's normally some running backs with like at least 18 to 20, maybe over 20 rushing touchdowns per season, but the most in this simulation was 10. Was freaking 10. It wasn't even like running backs you'd expect to have great seasons. It was Dion Lewis, CJ Prosise, TJ Yeldon, and LeGarrette Blount possibly. So I guess the running backs still had good seasons rushing yards wise, but touchdowns wise didn't have that great of seasons. No wide receivers had over 1,000 yards receiving the whole entire year, and they didn't really have many receptions either. The leading receiver was actually a tight end, and being Rob Gronkowski, and Julian Edelman led the NFL in receptions with 69. Rob Gronkowski had 8. And then Chris Conley had 7, and his bunch of receivers was 6 after that. So definitely the passing game was mostly affected out of this experiment. Now, the crazy part. Let's see who led the NFL in sacks. Oh my god, I said 25. Khalil Mack had 51 sacks. Holy crap, dude. 51 and a half freaking sacks. I did not expect that. Olivier Vernon had 48. Joey Bosa, a rookie, had 47, and J.J. Watt had 44, and then a little drop-off after that. But look at how many defensive ends, or defensive linemen in general, had. Barkevius Mingo was listed as an outside linebacker, so he was an outside linebacker in the top 10 for the MVP race. But look at how many defensive linemen, or just players in the front 7 in general, had over 20 sacks. Like, that's gotta be close to 100 defensive linemen with over 100 sacks. That is absolutely insane, man. Like, I didn't expect it to be that crazy, but it was. So total tackles, did that go up at all? No, but still. J.J. Watt had 124 total tackles, and 45 of those were sacks. So this was actually crazy. So this was actually a lot crazier than I thought. And also with the passing game not being as proficient, the interception leader had 4. And that was Jarrell Freeman and Landon Collins. And I'm wondering if the amount of field goals actually blocked went up, because I never really checked this, but it does seem like a lot of field goals were blocked throughout the season, which would make sense without having any offensive linemen and trying to kick a field goal at the same time. And how about punts blocked? Number of times the punts were blocked, and now that is actually crazy. Not one punt was blocked the whole entire season. Now, wouldn't you expect, without having an offensive line, that a couple punts would be blocked throughout the season? Like, I think in regular simulations, with half-decent offensive linemen, that there has to be some punts blocked. But without offensive linemen, there's no punts blocked. So pretty much that's all the stats I can think of to show you guys. So now we're going to go ahead and sim to the Super Bowl and see who wins the Super Bowl if the NFL didn't have offensive linemen. Last but not least, to end off today's video, let's see which team won the Super Bowl out of this experiment. And it's going to be, of course, the New England Patriots 24-10 over the Atlanta Falcons, which is really strange because obviously that's like the same game that happened this year in the real Super Bowl, and the Patriots still win, although it looks like they didn't come back from a 27-3 deficit, but they still end up being Super Bowl champions, which is kind of expected because they had like 20 more touchdowns offensively than any other team in the NFL. So that's crazy. But that's that. Patriots win. Hopefully you guys did enjoy today's experiment, and if you did, make sure to drop a like. Like I said, 1,000 likes on today's video, and I'll do the same exact idea, but tomorrow I'll do defensive linemen. So tomorrow, if this does hit 1,000 likes, expect what if there is no defensive linemen in the NFL. So if that video comes out tomorrow, I'd expect some running backs with some crazy numbers, and judging from this video, probably some quarterbacks with some absolutely insane numbers as well. But if you guys have any other ideas like this, let me know in the comment section below. But that's going to do it for me. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I will catch you guys next time. Have a great rest of your day. Peace.